Okay. Um, for those of you who know, we're beginning to get ready for a nosh, and we'll hear about it shortly. Let me tell you a little bit about our speaker. Bob Schwartz is not a Chicagoan. He is now, but he wasn't born here, so he doesn't know from the old part of the city, the West Side, or anything. But he knows it because he's lived it, and he's going to share some of those experiences and places with you. He's been here for over 44 years. He was with Vienna and became the national sales manager and a vice president, senior vice president. But some neat things. He created something called the Hot Dog Hall of Fame, which talks about places that many of you will recognize. And I'm not going to give you any of the names because he will. And then he has published a book that is the focus of the Chicago Historical Society once a year about hot dogs. And his book is Never Put Ketchup on a Hot Dog. So without any more babbling, I'd like to introduce Bob Schwartz. Thank you.
How are you? I probably don't even need it. I am Bob Schwartz, and I've been with Vienna Beef. Actually, I'm retired now, but I was there for 52 years. And I grew up in Cleveland, and I went to work for Vienna in Cleveland back in about 1972. And a year later, they asked my wife Marcia and I if we would move to Chicago because they felt that I could excel a lot faster there, and that was true. Plus, if when I got out of college, if you would have told me I'd be spending 50 years talking about hot dogs, I'd ask you what you were smoking. But that's what it turned out to be. And it's been quite an experience and quite a ride. I've done every sales and marketing thing at the company over those years. And there was, you develop a passion for these hot dog stands. And I think the fact that I didn't grow up with hot dog stands in Cleveland, they had some great delis, but the hot dogs you ate were at the ballpark. I was introduced to it, and I found that everybody grew up in a neighborhood, and the hot dog stand was the central part of that neighborhood. And there are even hot dog stand operators that have become mayors, and they are the focal point. I've heard all kinds of stories, and when I decided to write the book, I figured I should get somebody well known to write a foreword to the book, and I had I had people standing in line to do that. So my buddy Bob Surratt from TV and radio in Chicago was anteed up right away and wanted to talk about his experiences growing up at Maury's in Albany Park. And then another guy that spoke up was Joe Mantegna. The actor has been awesome. I see his brother sitting out there. And Joe and his wife Arlene opened a hot dog stand actually in California. And I think Joe only wanted to do it so on Friday afternoons he could bring all his Chicago friends there and schmooze. So, but that's what hot dog stands are for. I'm actually here today to talk about the big elephants in the room of the hot dog stand operators, and because it would take me a lot longer to go through the whole list of hot dog stands. But I wanted to start with where hot dog stands really began, and that was the Depression, 1930, and probably the most famous guy that started a hot dog operation then was Abe Fluky Drexler. And I'm sure a lot of you remember Flukies, maybe from that era or on the Great West Side, or certainly when he bridged the gap from the city to the suburbs by opening up in West Rogers Park and on Western Avenue in about 1962, and selling hot dogs for 15 cents then. During the Depression, it was a nickel, and they sold the Depression dog, and that was there was no poppy seed buns. They were plain buns, and they would put mustard, relish, or it was called pickle lily. I'm sure you all remember that, or many of you do. That lady over there does. And chopped onions for those that could take the onions. I do. My wife won't. And then they had a slice of cucumber. They didn't do pickles yet. So, and that you got all your food groups for a nickel, and that made the scene. And Fluky survived on that and reloaded and has opened so many places in the city at the time. That one was on Roosevelt and Central Park, the first one. And then I guess a few years later, there were two places that opened up that have been around for all that time, from about 80, 90 years. And one was Jim's Original on Halsted and Maxwell Street. And when UIC bought Halsted Street, basically in that area, they agreed to move Jim's and Express Grill, that were the two hot dog places, to another location on South Union. And they did that, and it was basically a little street that was also the on-ramp for the Dan Ryan, and they're still there. The other one was a place on Roosevelt and Holman on the south side of the street, and it was Dave's Red Hots. And I have to admit, when I originally wrote the book, I thought I put them in the chapter of the gone but not forgotten. And I had to, on the last two editions, one of which was this, I not only talked about Dave's, the third and last owner that's there, and is still there. They burned down in 1968 and in the riots, but they quickly opened up again across the street. And a lady by the name of Gina Fountain has been running that place for 40 years now. She's got a great smile and wears Bears stuff all the time, and a pretty amazing lady, especially in that neighborhood and that area. But it's still going, and it's still going strong. Then, in the early 40s, they had Little Italy, had Carms and the patio. And there was a guy that had a tall, lanky guy with a cowboy hat whose name was Gene Mormino. And he wanted to open up a hot dog stand on Polk and Western. So he did. And he was a great operator, but not much of a marketing guy, because he called the place Polk and Western. Not much ingenuity in that. But he did a great job of of selling himself and selling the products that he made, and he did a great job. He had one flaw, is that he liked to play poker. So I think what ended up happening, he got into a poker game and he had the greatest hand in the world. Where have you heard that before? Okay. And he lost the hot dog stand in the poker game. And, but he sucked it up and he did some odd jobs and even helped the guy that bought it and that got it from him, and then found another person to go into business with. And by 1950, 2 years later, they bought a piece of property with no streets paved yet over there. It was the town of River Grove, and it was the corner of Grand and River Road. And and the guy's name, the other partner's name was Jude DeSantis, and they decided to call it Gene and Jude's. And that place is around today and is the largest volume hot dog stand in the city, has been. They sell more hot dogs than Wrigley Field. And Gene nor Jude is around now. They haven't been for a while. But Gene's son bought out Jude's kids, and Joe Mormino, the son, he didn't even want to make a hot dog, though. He wanted to be a lounge singer in Las Vegas. So, and I can tell you he's a good singer because he sends me stuff. And he and his wife, Rose, I know we had dinner with them, my wife Marcia and I, and they're just wonderful people. But he's in Las Vegas. And there was one day that my wife and I went to a wedding in Elmwood Park, a Saturday morning. We're all dressed up. And if you know Italian weddings like that, they're beautiful weddings, but you got to wait 4 hours to eat lunch. So we weren't going to wait 4 hours, and we said, let's go to Gene and Jude's. And we did. We're standing in line, and all of a sudden a guy behind the counter comes up and he says, "Are you Bob?" And I said, "Yes." "You have a phone call." So I go in the back and get on the phone. "Hello?" And she said, and it's, "Bob, this is Rose Mormino." I said, "Where are you?" She says, "I'm in my kitchen in Las Vegas washing dishes. And I saw you on the Eye in the Sky." So they keep track of what's going on in their restaurant. And I took the liberty of putting together a bag of hot dogs for you and Marcia, and tell Marcia that I told them no onions on your hot dog. And so they know what's going on. It's like Big Brother is watching all the time. But in this case, it didn't matter because they got great people running the place. And besides that one, the kind of the little brother or sister of that place is down Grand Avenue a ways at Pulaski, Grand and Pulaski, Jimmy's Original. And it's was Jimmy Ferrugia that started this place. They do as much business as Gene and Jude's. They sell hot dogs and Polish sausage and not much else. And they don't take any guff. And Jimmy's son Frank took over after Jimmy was killed in a car accident. And Frank is, when you look at him, you could be scared to death because he's dressed like a motorcycle guy, which he is. but he is the most philanthropic guy around. He is one of the major contributors to the Toys for Tots program in the entire Midwest. And he undertakes a lot of other things. I was at an Italian beef place in Schiller Park that I love called Franny's, and I saw Frank's car outside, and I look inside, and there's a guy with sunglasses and a hat, and his collar's up. I said, "Frank?" And he says, "Hiya, Bob." I said, "What are you doing?" He says, "I'm picking up 50 Italian beef sandwiches." 50? What are you going to do with them? Well, once in a while, I feed the neighbors in the neighborhood, he is. And that's the kind of guy he is. So there are a couple of people that have unique situations in hot dog stands that have both been around for 3/4 of a century. I had read a book. I read an article in a magazine. It was in about 2003, and the magazine was the Nation's Restaurant News, and the story was about what it takes to be a successful restaurant, and they were all legitimate things. But when it it got to one point that caught my eye. It says you have to be open for at least 7 years. Well, I thought about that 7 years, and I said, I know a bunch of 30 hot dog stands I could rattle off that have that blow those numbers away by decades. And that's when I decided to start a hot dog hall of fame. I was done running Chicago sales, and the boss asked, "What would you like to do?" And I said, "Well, a few things, but one of them is I want to start a hot dog hall of fame." He said, "What is it?" "It's a way of saying thank you to the people that brought us to the dance." And in the 20 years I ran that program, nationwide, we put 150 places in the Hall of Fame, and they all got their notoriety. And I had one guy that walked up to me and whispered in my ear, "Huh, my son now respects what I do for a living." Um, so it was really something. Well, we're still in the 40s and early 50s, and I can't go without talking about Superdog a little. Superdog Maury and Flory Berman, in 1948, they were college kids, and they decided to have a hot dog plate that was a little different, where you eat in your car, um, and what started out as a temporary thing has now been around for 3 generations. And they've been around, and right now his sister, Maury and Flory are gone now, although their cartoon caricatures are still on the roof. And they opened another one in Wheeling, and their granddaughter runs that one. And she got a degree in the food business from the University of Maryland, and then came back to run that one, the one in Wheeling. And Maury's and Flory's daughter and her husband run the original one. And Don Drucker, that was the son-in-law, is probably the hardest working guy I've met in the hot dog stand. I don't think he takes a day off or a holiday off at all. He is always there. Amazing. So it's a family that really cares about the business and does a lot of things for the community. Besides Superdog, Um, we got into the 50s, and there were two places that ironically started in 1952 and lasted till 1985. The numbers were pretty much the same. One was on the south side and one was on the north side. And they both catered to the high school kids from those areas. Of course, on the south side, if any of you grew up in the south side, I'm sure you were into Carl's. And Carl's was a great place, and it was the meeting place for the kids that went to Bowen and South Shore High School. Am I right? and uh, and I had a friend who grew up he went to Bowen, and his wife went to South Shore. And his name is Lou Harris, and he lives in California, and he wrote a little thing about Carl's. And I said, I liked what you wrote. Do you mind if I just use that in the book? And I did. And ironically, I was sitting at the counter at Tappy's in Niles having breakfast one day, and George, who owns the place, he came, and he's the mayor of Niles now. He came up and he said, "Do you know that lady over there?" I said, "No," and she was reading the newspaper. So he introduced her to me, and she says, I am Carl Wolf's uh, niece. And I want you to know you wrote a nice thing about him, but uh, but you spelled his name wrong. So she corrected me that it's Wolffe. So I said, if I write another copy, I'll correct it. But thank you very much. But Carl's, and the other one I want to mention, the Red Hot Ranch on the north side, which was on Devon near Thillins, and that was the north side version of Carl's, and both of those places you had to go outside to change your mind. They're that small. And they could two or three people could be in there, and it was so ironic. I don't know if I can find a picture in here, but they when when I talked about Carl's to the book designer, and I told him this was really a small place, he made Carl's a two-page centerfold. So I said, I wanted to put down this is the actual size of the restaurant. So, but those are the kinds of restaurants that people remember and that were so important to the community. I know that when I talk about Maury's, everybody, I know Bob Surratt talked about the fact that, even in the blizzard of 67, when Maury couldn't get to work, the kids in the neighborhood ran the restaurant, and they put all the money in a cigar box and then just gave it to him the next day when he showed up. But that those were important times. And then things started to change a little bit because we had the migration. That's when Fluky's came back and was in he in West Rogers Park, and here's Fluky's and their grand opening, and he was selling hot dogs for 5 cents again, which was his original price during the Depression. And that was quite a job. And they stayed there for quite a while, and they were What Fluky did that was different was the little things. You know, in the summertime, he would walk around in the restaurant with little ice cream cones or cups of ice cream for people after they finished eating. In the winter, he had little cups of coffee or hot chocolate that he offered everybody. And that's how he got to know them. His son Jack adopted that whole presentation as well. And technically, they still have a place in that Jack has a little kiosk that's in a Walmart on Tui that's Fluky's, but I think they sell more popcorn balls and cotton candy than they do hot dogs there. Um, but in the case of, then when they opened up there, a cousin of Fluky opened up not far from there on Peterson and California, and that was Wolfie's. And Wolfie's was run by um, the son-in-law, Mickey Becker, and he ran it for 30 years. He's a guy that grew up in Milwaukee and ended up retiring and going back to Milwaukee. And he sold the business to a very nice Greek family who has been in the food business for a long time. And I became friends with Pete Romas, one of the sons, and he also owns an Italian beef place in um, Oak Park. It's called Michael's Beef House. So, but besides that, we have our area up that's in Skokie. A lot of hot dog stands surfaced there. And I think the two most famous and most interesting is the fact that Herms and Poochie's. It's the extension of Herms Palace, Herms, Big Herms, but it became Herms Palace across the street. And they're a third of a mile from Poochie's, which was started by Harvey Bernstein. And after 25 years, he sold it to a Greek couple who found that they couldn't run the business and called their son, who was a trained airline mechanic and a carpenter. And he said, okay, I'll give it a shot. And he's still there and is not only running that business, but he started a catering business out of there that's just phenomenal. And that's really something. So the other thing that I'm missing so far, and I got to leave a little time here to talk to you about Portillo's. You know, a lot of people say that Portillo's isn't what it used to be. And I hear all kinds of complaints. But if you knew Dick Portillo, I did. And he was an amazing character. And he ran that business. I could walk into his office and ask him, how much chocolate cake did you sell? He said, you mean last week, last month, or last year? And that's just chocolate cake. He knew what was going on in his whole business. He would drive to one of his restaurants, get one of his employees' cars, and drive to another restaurant incognito to go through the drive-through and see if he was running it right. That's the kind of guy he was, and it was always like that. He started out with a shack in Villa Park and had no hot and cold running water, and he tapped into the National Tea grocery store line to get water, and he tried to borrow money from the bank to fix his business a little and expand. So he couldn't, he didn't have the collateral. So he went to his landlord, got in a suit and tie and went over to his landlord's office and asked him if he could borrow $25,000. And the landlord said, "What are you going to do with it?" He said, "I'm going to fix what I need to fix in my restaurant, and I want to start another place." And the landlord told his secretary to bring in a check for $25,000 made out to Richard Portillo. And that was the beginning. From then on, everything he did, he just was so emphatic about everything being just right. The hot dogs had to be hot. And I remember my wife and I were invited to the opening of his store in Vernon Hills. And we went there, we sat down, we were eating. He came over and he actually said, to my wife, Marcia, "What do you think?" And she said, "The food is great. And I love the car that you have on the ceiling and the girls that are sitting on the running board." And he said, "Well, thank you, but they're wearing the wrong shoes, but I'll fix it." And that's the kind of guy that he was. He so important that everything is exactly right. Most hot dog stands kept their water at 180 or 185 degrees, maybe 190, but he wanted 205. He wanted everything hot. And, we at Vienna, he used natural casing hot dogs for his regular hot dog. And we cautioned him that, that's almost the boiling point and you'll split the casing. He said, "They won't be in there long enough. We sell them fast enough for them not to break the casings." So anyway, I don't know how much time I got. If plenty of time. Okay. So there are, because I want to leave some time for questions, because I'm sure that a lot of you folks have a lot of questions, but these are just some of the mainstream guys there, but there were others. There was Gold Coast Dogs that had really championed a lot of things in the city, and added music to the hot dog stand besides different sandwiches. And they were the first ones, I think, to use poppy seed buns. So the dragging it through the garden became the new thing in the 70s and 80s, and going forward. But now the old-fashioned Depression dog has come back. There's a place that opened up, a new Red Hot Ranch opened up in the city. There are 3 places, and the people that opened it up were the original owners of the Wiener Circle. And the Wiener Circle sold about 10 years ago to Larry Levy's son. I forgot his first name, but they carried on, and they have now fixed the place up and doing great. But the old owners decided to do something else. Larry Gold and Vicky Nemero and Jeff Greenfield was the young guy that came over with them, although not as young anymore. But they opened up the Red Hot Ranch, which was the Depression dog, and the smash burger style hamburgers and milkshakes. And they have done a great job with a location on Armitage and Western, and one on Berry and Ashland in the city. And then the guys that bought Oberweis Dairy weren't happy with the business they were doing. They called Jeff Greenfield and said, "Would you want to put a hot dog stand in our restaurants? And we can try out the one in Skokie first, on Skokie and Dempster." Uh, and and they did. And they opened last September. And I asked him, how is the business going? He said, "We're doing 4 times more than we thought. And Oberweis's business has increased 30%. They want us to go all over as many places as we want. We're going to take it easy, but we're going to open one in either in Downers Grove and or Naperville at their restaurants because they were the easiest to transition." So there's a lot of growth in the business with people that have a backstory of them themselves. And I think with that, I'd like to ask if anybody who's ever got questions. Yes, sir.
Why do they put poppy seeds on the buns?
Well, they put poppy seeds because they felt that it was something different and made the made the bun better. No, it does not. When I do parties, of course, I don't want the poppy seeds all over the floor, so I use plain buns, but I use all the other ingredients for the hot dog.
There you go.
Yes, sir.
Doing very well, but I happen to be at Uchi's.
The mic is over here.
Oh,
Bring the microphone over there.
okay. Then let's go over here first.
No worries. Thank you so much. It was all of our, the hot dog was everybody's favorite food growing up. It still is. My dream was always to have a hot dog joint, right?
Mm-hmm.
But my question is, and I did some reading about this, but if somebody buys the same hot dog and you've got probably many stories about Vienna and the different kinds, but let's say your major's the same dog, what makes it different from one place to the other?
Well, that's a good question. I don't think I've ever been asked that one, but the difference really is all of the extra things that go into it. They, first of all, like Portillo makes sure that he gets a hot dog. And there are other places that maybe steam it a different way. They put the condiments on differently. And I feel that the condiments are really the reason that is the one thing that can change the flavor of that hot dog. If you put on too much relish or too much mustard, it's going to ruin the taste of the hot dog. That's one of the reasons you don't use ketchup. Besides being, having 3 different types of sugar in it, it overwhelms the hot dog and you don't taste it. I guess that's why kids like it, because it tastes sweeter. But you want to taste the hot dog, and you put a line of mustard and a little bit of relish across the top, and the same thing with onions, and 2 sport peppers, a wedge of tomato, 2 of those, and a sport pepper if you will, if you want it, and then that's it.
Celery. Celery.
Oh, and celery, a dash, not empty the jar of celery salt.
You mentioned that they told you at the hot dog ranch that business is doing very well. But I was at Poochie's about a month ago, and a hot dog, fries, and a Coke are $12.
I know.
As the prices go up, do you think that will kind of like kill the venue? Obviously, it's not going to be any more of the Depression area hot dog, but how much more are we willing to spend on a hot dog and fries and a Coke than, let's say, $12? And obviously, the price is probably not going to go down. If anything, it'll keep going up.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned Poochie's because if anybody asks me what my favorite hot dog is, that is right up there. That's like the top of the heap. And Chris does a great job of consistency, the hot dog, and the staff is well versed in what they have to do. And yes, it is very expensive now compared to the Depression style dog, which is getting more expensive too. But I believe that Red Hot Ranch sells it for $6.99, and you got the hot dog with fries there. And so they're undercutting the market. It's a skinnier hot dog. And if you get a double dog, it's $1 more. Yeah, they were, but they may have been changing. Even Superdog takes credit cards now. Yeah.
Bob, I've got a couple, 3 questions. By the way, we have 32 people on Zoom. We have 92 here, so it's a good showing. Thank you for the shout out. I'm Ron Montaigne.
Yes.
Thank you for a shout out to Brother Joe. I'm going to ask you a question. It's always curious to me. I don't know if you're allowed to answer it. What's in a hot dog?
Well, let me put it this way. I've had people come to take a tour of the factory, and they were afraid that when they took the tour afterward, whether they would eat a hot dog. And I have not had anybody that turned down the hot dog. As a matter of fact, they were running to it. What goes into the hot dog, I can tell you what goes into a Vienna hot dog is there's 2 different forms of beef. There's domestic fresh bull meat. Now, bull meat is very lean, and they add a certain amount of that, and then they have the meat from the trimmings of brisket trimmings. So you have a real lean meat and one that's got a little fat in it, and they put them into a computer that tells you the fat to lean content of the product that you end up with. And it's the right amount of fat content for you to take that bite and get the firm bite of the bull meat and still get the flavor of the other meat.
Good. There's time for a couple more. Do you know, or does anyone here know what the cost of a hot dog is at Cubs at Sox Park?
It's probably the Cubs is probably $9 or $10
for a hot dog?
I heard 12.
The one person here heard 12. So,
Wow.
well, maybe,
Yeah. A hot dog is more expensive. This year, more than any year I remember.
maybe the tariffs. Okay. We'll talk about it.
Well, it's also because the trimmings are higher and the other meat is higher. So everything that they're buying has been a lot higher. I've been gone for a year and I'm happy I'm gone. I don't have to deal with a lot of that, but it's rough and it's hurting a lot of hot dog stands.
All right. 2 more. One more question. 2 more. One. Those of us that are shoppers, what hot dog would you buy or suggest that would come closest to being perfection? Or is it a matter of choice?
Well, Vienna hot dogs.
Dog that store, but at a grocery store.
In a grocery store. Well, Vienna hot dogs are in the grocery store. And if I had to say the best other hot dog would be the Romanian kosher hot dog.
Okay. Last question. I don't know how true this is, but I understood that Oscar Mayer's wife, they didn't get along, and she disappeared after a visit. Have you heard that, or can you add any credence to that? Otherwise, I'm going to turn the microphone back to our auditorium.
No comment.
Great presentation. What's wrong with putting ketchup on a hot dog?
Well, I made that pretty clear that it is got way too much sugar, and the ingredients that are in there aren't right because it overwhelms the hot dog. A condiment is supposed to be just that, supporting cast. And the hot dog really disappoints. Now, that's why, I mean, even Barack Obama said, no, you can't put ketchup on a hot dog, but if you're under 8 years old, we give you a pass. So I guess I don't agree with everything Obama says, but I'll say that one, I would say yes.
One for history and one for taste. My family goes way back in food service, and my dad always said that originally hot dogs were given away at bars pre-depression to help sell beer. And the other question is, it's probably personal taste, natural casing versus.
Well, the natural casing thing I'll address is I like natural casing better also. And it's a firmer bite, and especially if I'm having somebody mentioned Poochie's, and he makes the best char jumbo hot dog around, and that's a natural casing jumbo. He also makes a Polish sausage like that, and it's great. So, but as I don't remember, what was the other part of the question?
Dogs originally.
Oh, well, I wasn't around then. And even in my growing up years in Cleveland, I didn't think much of hot dogs other than when I went to the ballpark. And I know when my wife and I went to the ballpark, she was more for the mustard because they have that stadium mustard there, which I think you can buy at Heinen's grocery store. Oh,
Yeah.
go ahead.
All right. The
Yeah.
first hot dog stand you mentioned when you started was Maury's hot dog stand.
Well, that was
the
one of
first
them.
one you came up with. And I went to Roosevelt High School, and we used to go to Maury's. And
Yeah.
I'm not sure if it was on Drake or
No, it was
Ella and Lawrence,
Lawrence and Lawndale.
and he's a little bit west. The kids at Roosevelt, please don't take this the wrong way. They used to refer to Maury's as Maury's Cancer Kitchen. I kid you not. And
Okay.
anyway, let me tell you one other thing. I don't know if in your experience and time have heard this, but I once had, when I was in college, a gal gave a talk on what was great about eating a Chicago hot dog. And what it was eating neon green relish. Had you ever heard that term?
Yes,
Neon green.
I of course I have. Yes, neon green relish. It's the bright green relish, but it's referred to in a lot of different ways. But I don't even like relish on my hot dog, tell you the truth, because it's too sweet. But a lot of other, I get MOT, mustard, onions, tomato, and a slice of pickle.
Could you tell us briefly about the Costco hot dog?
Okay, everybody wants to know how can they sell the hot dog for a buck and a half forever? Well, easy. The owners of Costco bought a hot dog company about 15 years ago, and it was called Atkins at the time in Seattle, and and they made the decision right then and there, we are never going to raise the price of the hot dog. So, whether you like it or don't like it, it's the best value in America today. That and their $5 chicken.
Hi, could you tell us if and when Vienna's going to come back to the North Side restaurant retail?
Yeah, here's what happened. They moved back their offices to Damon Avenue a year ago, 2 years ago, almost. Yeah, and the project was then to build the factory store, and they had the money laid out for it. But what they did is the pickle business took off. Vienna's pickle business is huge and is a lot more profitable than the hot dogs right now. So what they did is they built another pickle plant in Ohio, near the growing area of Ohio and Michigan, a crop, and they can make and ship pickles easier. So that's their third pickle plant. They have one in Florida, one in California, and one there. But the meat plant is all here. So yes, it is still on the burner. They are supposedly working on it. I don't know how far it is.
I've got a story over here just like to share because of your book. You and I met a number of years ago with Ron, and I was working on the restaurant book for Chicago, but I was living in Dallas, and the folks down there, live on barbecue and Mexican food, but they said, well, what's so special about a Chicago hot dog? So my now late wife and I threw a Chicago-style hot dog dinner for our Texas friends. And on the front door, we had a sign that said, don't even think of asking for ketchup. To me, the defining difference, though, is celery salt. They never heard of such a thing being on a hot dog, but we did it all right. I went to a restaurant supply store, I bought the little red baskets, the deli tissues, the whole shot. And it was a very, very successful dinner, but it was the celery salt that blew them away.
Well, Vienna's got the e-commerce business that where they're shipping product to consumers around the country. And one of the biggest things is the hot dog kit that they sell hot dogs, buns, and then all of the condiments that go with it. So yeah, that's probably the favorite. And if I have to send somebody out of town, we do that too. It's the easiest way for them to get it. It's not cheap, but people really appreciate getting it.
Well, the celery salt thing, there's one word that came out of the Texas crowd. What? Bob, on behalf of everyone, I want to thank you for coming in and talk to us. Great presentation, always a lot of fun.
Well, thank you all. This was very enjoyable, and there was a lot of love that went into the making of the book a long time ago, and it still resonates. And I thank you for your comments and your patience.
Thank you so much, Bob. We really appreciate your time.